thank you. Administrator, thank you for your presence this morning. I would reinstitute an invitation. In fact, we came close to having a visit together to Kansas, and I'd re-up that in your world. We'd love to show you certainly things about production agriculture, but Feed the Future is a significant component of our university system, and we would welcome you to our state. I want to highlight just a couple of things and then ask a question. You indicated the importance in the conversation with Senator Graham about bilateral, and you also mentioned in your testimony about the desire of many countries to have a trade agreement or trade relationship with us. I would encourage you within the Biden administration to encourage the Biden administration to be interested in trade agreements with countries. And we are not negotiating around the globe, and that long-term relationship in an economic trading circumstance has significant value, and value beyond food aid, and in some ways value beyond sustainability within that country. So just an opportunity for me to use this moment to highlight, perhaps to my colleagues, but to whoever is listening, that we need to negotiate around the globe for agreements to trade with countries, and even in a bilateral, if not a multilateral fashion. Prior to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Ukraine, of course, was a key supplier and met many of the needs, particularly in Africa and Asia, in food supply. I wanted to check in with you and find out what you could tell me about the Black Sea Grain Initiative and what its status is. Is Russia abiding by it? Is Turkey helpful? What's the United States doing? And in the circumstance we find ourselves in with this lack of Ukrainian and Russian grain, any suggestions that you would provide to me and to the subcommittee for how we can best promote and encourage the opportunity for American farmers and ranchers to help fill that gap? I'll leave it there, and then I have one follow-up.
Thank you so much. First, let me say that on your first comment, that USAID is very active, notwithstanding maybe the absence of a free trade agreement. There's still a lot of trade going on, both vis-a-vis the United States and regionally in many of the countries we work. And we do think there's still a ton to do in the area of trade facilitation, and that's one of the components of the economic growth and economic development initiative that we are trying to spearhead at USAID. I think there's also a whole set of questions about the enabling environment, the regulatory environment, de-bureaucratization that would make it easier and more attractive for whether American agricultural companies or others in the private sector to invest. And so I do think USAID can be doing a lot more in that domain, and that will benefit American businesses, including agro-businesses. With regard to the Black Sea Grain Initiative, signed back in July of 2022, I would say it's a mixed picture. It's the fact that it has basically freed the 20 to 25 million metric tons of grains that were backed up at that time has been incredibly helpful to the other countries like Somalia, Egypt, Lebanon that are dependent on grain from Ukraine. We just have a shipment going from Ukraine. In fact, I think it arrived yesterday, will arrive today, to Yemen. Just a reminder again of Ukraine as the breadbasket of the world. The fact that Putin is not only killing Ukrainians but weaponizing food for developing countries is just a complete outrage. I think Turkey's diplomatic role, the UN's diplomatic role, was pivotal. We, of course, supported it behind the scenes. The voices from leaders in the Global South proved pivotal with Putin as well. I think that pressure from the Global South. And you now see, as you probably know better than anybody, cereal prices down, I think, for the 15th straight month, and that there are many factors to that, but certainly getting more grain on the open market is going to be better for food inflation writ large. Right now, Russia is saying that it only agreed to a 60-day extension. They're saying that publicly. We are hopeful that the agreement will proceed as it is meant to. There really should be an infinite extension. This should not be time-bound. This is about food that needs to get to hungry people all around the world. The last thing I'd say, Senator, is USAID launched something called Agri-Ukraine that I'm incredibly proud of, which is basically about expanding storage capacity, getting seeds to farmers, getting microloans to farmers to replace equipment that might have been destroyed, but also enhancing use of rail, road, the Danube, to also be more diversified in terms of exports and the means of export. So it isn't at all a solution, because the Black Sea is where material and commodities move at scale, but I do think, you know, at the end of this war, Ukraine is going to end up much more integrated by road, rail, and river than it would have been had Putin not put in place this blockade. So this idea of build back better and greater resilience in the long term, I think, is very important.
That at least reminds me of the most recent visit to Poland to take a look at Ukraine, and the Ukrainian plea was for support of infrastructure to get grain moving in other directions, as you, I think, are describing. And secondly, the need for diesel fuel to get their equipment to be able to operate to plant and to harvest. And I don't know whether USAID is involved in assisting in the actual production and harvesting of crops in Ukraine, but you're shaking your head yes, and it's encouraging. The final point I'd make is we have a new ambassador, Ambassador McCain, to the World Food Program. We wish Ambassador Beasley well, who I think did an exceptionally fine and wonderful job. He's a great human being. Is there anything that is changing in the relationship between USAID and the World Food Program as a result of the change of leadership?
USAID is WFP's largest funder, thanks to you. I've already been in touch with Cindy last week and will again this week. Tragically, 3 WFP aid workers were murdered in Sudan with the latest outbreak of violence. And you know, we look forward to having just the kind of relationship we had with Ambassador McCain as we did with Executive Director Beasley. I don't think we can say enough about the job that he did. Senator Graham mentioned the doubling of hungry people just in the last couple years. Well, this Congress stepped up heroically with these Ukraine supplementals and with the flexibility in those supplementals to be able to reach people in sub-Saharan Africa. Anybody who was indirectly affected by the Ukraine war, we were able to use some of those supplemental resources to reach. And I just, you know, will remain permanently grateful forevermore to David Beasley for the relationships he built up here, the advocacy and the partnership that we had, and we expect it to be just as strong with Ambassador McCain. Thank you.
We share that view of Ambassador Beasley, and we hope that's exactly the same with Ambassador.
Should be, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.